Hello friends, in today's lecture we will talk about consistent hashing. Why do we need consistent hashing and how can we do that? Let's take a look into one simple example where we have an app server, customer is calling us for put object API. Then our app server calls the put entry into our database server for storing the record in database. And the object structure is pretty simple. We have an ID field and a name field. And when customer call us, we store them in our database table like this. ID and the name are two different fields, right? And later when customer call us like get object, they actually provide us the key. And using that key, we look into our database. Where do we have key 100? Here, right? Then our app server makes a query to our DB server. Then from there, we retrieve the value and return to our customer like this. Now this is pretty simple and works fine. However, in today's large scale systems, we cannot store everything or all data into one single databases. So we need to kind of store data in multiple databases, right? So what happens when we have multiple servers or multiple databases? The first question comes into my mind when we are getting a put object or get object call. We will be running some kind of query, right? But we have 4 different databases in this case. How do we know on which server we want to run the query? That is the very first question we need to answer, right? So there are very simple ways we can manage this, right? What we can do, we can store these databases metadata in some sort of list or array, and when a request, put object request is coming to our app server, we can maintain some sort of mapping, right? Say for example, key 1 will go to this server, key 2 will go to this server, something like this. And when customer will call us for getting the object, we know based on the key where we have stored that object earlier. We can go to that database and run the query. Now the question is how can we generate the mapping? For generating the mapping, we need to first calculate the index of our database server. When we are getting an object, how do we identify the DB server index on which server we want to store? So we can follow some simple calculation, something like this. Server index is equal to hash function. We provide the key. For simplicity, let's assume whatever integer ID we are providing, it will not change the value, it will return the same thing. Then we can module it by number of servers, which is n. N is the total number of servers. In our case, it's 4. So in this way, we can store all the values in some very specific database server. Say for example, when customer give us key 100, so 100 mod 4 is equal to 0, right? So we will store this in server 0 here. When customer give us value 2 mod 4 is still 2, so we will be storing this into server index 2 in this server. This is pretty good, but we have some issues when we are following like normal hashing, right? Let's see what issues do we have with normal hashing. First, let's answer the question what if one database server goes down? Say for example, if DB1 goes down, what will happen? Earlier we have total number of servers 4, right? Now we have total number of servers is equal to 3. That means the hash or the mapping from object key to our DB server has changed. Say for example, before we have 100 mod 4 is equal to 0 and it went to server 0, but now 100 mod 3 is equal to basically 1 and it is going to server 1, right? Similarly, for 102 it was stored in server 2, Now 102 is stored in server 0. So the issue is, even only one server went down, which is our DB1, the mapping is changing everywhere. We need to remap all the databases in all of our servers, right? So we need to remap all keys from all servers. So that is the issue here. Another question is, what if we add a new server? Say for example, we added a new server DB4, and now the total number of server is 5, right? Same thing will happen. Even if we added one new server, we need to remap all keys because our database server index calculation has changed. How can we overcome this? Here comes the idea of consistent hashing. We do have some issues with normal hashing. That's why we are coming with a new sort of hashing mechanism, which we are calling consistent hashing. In consistent hashing, we divide the whole solution space into multiple small places, and we call this like hash space, and then we construct the hash space into a circular way, and we call it like hash ring. Then we first place the servers on the hash ring. Say for example, we have 4 different servers, db0, db1, db2 and db3. We are putting them into the ring by passing the server indexes through some sort of hashing mechanism, right? Earlier we hashed only the object keys. This time we are hashing the server keys as well. Next, we place the object keys on the hash ring, definitely after applying the hash functions. Say for example, we have 4 different keys, and which are placed in different places based on the output of their hash function, right? Now what is the mechanism how this data or the object will be mapped to different servers in the ring? So map object keys to the first server moving clockwise. What we will do, we will try to move clockwise. Say for key 102 will be mapped to db2, and key 103 will be mapped to this. Similar way, this will be mapped to this, and this will be mapped to this. Let's think about the previous scenarios. What if one server goes down? Say for example, db server 2 went down. What will happen? According to the consistent hashing mechanism, so this value were assigned to this before, right? Now this is no more valid. Only this key will be assigned to the next server, right? This was to this already. So that's why we are saying only remap objects from the unhealthy servers to the next server in the ring. Everything else remains unchanged. So this is the benefit. In our normal hashing, if one server went down, we had to kind of like remap everything again. But in ring style consistent hashing, if one server is going down, we only remap the values which were part of or assigned to or mapped to that specific server. And what if a new server is added? Similar way. Say for example, a new server is added here. Anything before that within this area will be just remapped to the new server. That's all. So we had 100 before assigned to db0. Now 100 is mapped to new db4. Let's take a look. If this db server goes down, db2, what happens? That means there is no server here. So this is our next server. Everything within this ring part will be assigned to this db server. Any new request comes and falls into this part will be assigned to db3. So this way our database server 3 will be overwhelmed, like overloaded pretty soon, and there is a risk that it will go down or fail. How can we overcome this? There is a concept of like virtual nodes. Instead of putting one single instances of our server against one physical server, we create multiple virtual nodes or virtual servers and place them into the ring or hash ring, right? Say for example, here we have db01, db02 and db03. Similar way, for db server 1 we have 1 1, DB server 1 2, DB server 1 3. If any single server goes down now, it does not create a big empty space in the ring. Rather, it creates multiple separated a small number of chunks or empty spaces. Say for example, if DB server 1 goes down, it will create this empty space and this empty space and this empty space, right? So if a new request comes, there will be a less chance like it's always hitting these empty spaces. And the mapping would be also redistributed again multiple servers rather than one single server. In real world, we don't have a small number of virtual nodes. Rather, we have thousands of virtual nodes against a physical server, and the hash ring is splitted into multiple small chunks, and virtual nodes or servers are placed in many different places. This way, it helps us to rebalance and redistribute the load easily without kind of overloading or impacting any single server. So these are the concept of consistent hashing, and it helps us to work smoothly in an environment where servers are coming up and going down frequently. Hope it makes sense. Thanks.